Driving down in the 57 T-Bird to the beach. Oh, that's running. I'm going to refill the tea.
Take it away, RJ.
Yeah, the tip typewriter alarm clock machine is toasty here in Spokane, Washington, where we've been flirting with 100 degrees and is going to keep at that. I think Ellensburg, Washington will be bursting into flames. It's hot around in here. They're issuing warnings about people, make sure they're hydrated and all of that. Don't do anything outside unless you absolutely have to. I don't know whether Jackson in his environment, has had to squeeze the humidity out of the cat and what other things might be going on in there. Anyway, we've got a jam-packed show of not only the stuff that's on the agenda, which relates to the astonishing tome of Replacing Darwin by Nathaniel Jensen, somebody who never lets ideology get in the way of even more ideology. And then also some discussions about an attempt to hijack a Southern racist to evolutionary theory. But there's been a busy day today because of a bunch of stuff that's been popping up on the sidelights, some of which is going to be in future books and other material that I wanted Scientist Mel to find out about because it's right up her alley and the stuff that she's doing on the weekends on shows. So one off the bat has to do with our God King Emperor Trump and his family, who have been spooling out conspiracy theory claptrap about COVID-19 and apparently the Sinclair News Network, which is kind of like a baby Murdoch, put their stuff up briefly and then it hit the fan that this was wildly inaccurate stuff. And I hadn't actually followed some of this too closely, like Dr. Stella Emanuel, who is claiming that gynecological problems are caused by people having sex in their dreams with demons and witches, that alien DNA is currently being used for medical treatments, that scientists have plans to install microchips in people and are developing a vaccine to prevent people from being religious, that the government is run in part by reptilians and other aliens, that the magic 8-ball toy is psychic and part of a scheme to get children used to witchcraft, that hydroxychloroquine cures COVID-19, and protective face masks aren't necessary at all, that the Illuminati has a plan hatched by a witch to destroy the world using abortion, gay marriage, and children's toys, not necessarily in that order, that Harry Potter and the Wizards of Waverly Place are part of a scheme to introduce children to spirits and witches, that schools teach children to meditate so they can meet with demons, that gay marriage will lead to adults marrying children, and gay Americans are practicing homosexual terrorism, I guess throwing homosexuals at windows. I'm not entirely sure how that form of terrorism works. Children need to be whipped, in her view. And finally, Jesus Christ will destroy Facebook's servers if her videos aren't restored to the platform. So we will soon discover whether Zuckerberg or Yahweh have more clout.
I just have a quick thing. I think the gay agenda for terrorism is blasting everybody with Broadway musicals, Cher and Glitter. I don't know.
Absolutely, yeah, and being co-star best friend characters on television. Yeah.
I mean, if the gay agenda involves John Barrowman from Doctor Who plays Captain Jack, I'm all for terrorism.
Oh yeah, yeah. Or the guy that plays King George in Hamilton. I mean, yeah, let's go.
Absolutely, why not, man? That's fun.
Anyway, I gave Mel some various references, and we'll probably be dealing with it in future, because this, if you have a triage of stupid, where the ultimate example of what is flat Earth, that is so colossally stupid that you go that anybody who thinks it is immediately has to be having gears falling out of their head or something while they're walking along. But although unbelievably stupid, it's virtually irrelevant. I mean, it's not affecting anything. There's no leaders of countries that believe in flat Earth, and for all practical purposes that I've ever heard. But the kind of claptrap about the demonic things and hydroxychloroquine and all that, that kills people. And so that level, even though it's at a lower level of head up your assism, it's functionally dangerous, and it infiltrates things. The Tea Party apparently was behind a bunch of these little doctors, and they've got white lab coats on, so they must be real scientists. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And they put them in front of the Supreme Court. And when Trump was quizzed about this by a reporter, he just kind of flipped it off. I don't really know anything about these odd views. I don't really care about all that. Well, damn it. You should find out. You're my employee. You're the president of the United States. I technically pay your salary along with everybody else. And I think we need better job performance on this. So, yipes.
I was just going to say, did you see that Trump is really upset that his ratings are down, but Dr. Fauci's ratings are up?
After all, the measure of leadership in a nation is what kind of ratings you get, not how well things actually work. My gosh, I bet I can tell you right off the bat that President Trump's video ratings are way higher than Abraham Lincoln's, than Thomas Jefferson. Teddy Roosevelt never had any Twitter following compared to Donald Trump. I mean, let's just face it. Yeah, who can argue with that? Exactly. I think poor Jackson is just sitting there going, the world is going insane. Well, anyway, T.D. Lane would have been in here, but apparently his internet has been hit by demons. We can attribute it to that as well. But he is in the live chat. There's a bunch of people in there. Ian Chen is in the live chat. We got Tornado in a junkyard. Yes. And all that. Tornado asked, can you shoot me the link? Somebody online. I don't have Twitter back going on there, so that can be dumped to those who wish to be. Hi, Vesta. I happen to allude to the T-Bird, driving down the T-Bird to the beach, and realized when the comments were going on that they haven't made Thunderbirds in like 15 or 20 years, and they really weren't a heyday car since like the 1970s. So I realized this is like me mentioning buggy whips and crystal set radios. So I think we're and fax machines and all the rest. Although fax machines actually still are a bottleneck in the printing industry, because huge amounts of medical material has to go through fax machines. So they've got this sudden printer bottleneck that goes up, that they're trying to find ways to electronify it and get apps to speed up the process and all that. Well, I can attribute my digressions for this first few minutes to the fact that it's damn hot here in Spokane. So let's try to get back to the actual program here. And dear Nathaniel Jensen, that going on. Apropos this, in our live chats that we go on the Twitter, it turns out that Robert Carter, the creationist, had April 2019, put up more evidence for the reality of genetic entropy update, where he is still insisting that H1N1 is declining and only came about because of a laboratory breach in 1970s in Russia. Yeah, Jackson Wheat, you're getting a furrowed look on your face on that one. So I think we're going to be wanting to put a lot of this relevant information in the update section of the second volume. And our friend Dan Stern Cardinale has been, Tornado Pelt, you're here.
I swear it's like running NTSC out here.
Yeah. The Dan Stern Cardinale has been reading Standing for Truth's 2020 book, Universal or Separate Ancestry, which is a great big volume of 111 pages of fairly big print. Now, Jackson, I want you to hold on to your seat here for shock. His reference list is 3 pages long.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it runs all the way from pages 108 to 111. Now, I feel really slighted because in our Rocks Were There book, we had only 164 pages of small print references. So that means that if you printed our reference bibliography at the same pitch size as Standing for Truth's ebook, I think we would have about a 500-page work.
Hot damn.
Yeah. So I do have to tell you,
we had a lot of sources.
We can sure learn a lot about scholarship from Standing for Truth. And to be fair, Standing for Truth's reference bibliography is bigger than Jensen's because he didn't provide one.
And it's bigger than Hoven's.
Well, then again, yeah. Anyway, Jensen's book doesn't have a reference bibliography. It doesn't have an index. By the way, neither does Standing. Although I was able to do some text searches on the Amazon version of it. And apparently there's no mention of therapsids, 1 brief mention of mammals, 2 brief mentions of dinosaurs, no mention at all of endosymbiosis. So like, wow.
So there's no mention of anything that could possibly disprove him. Is that
yeah, basically it's a retread of Jensen, Tompkins, Sanford, genetic entropy, all of that stuff. He's a good stenographer, copying things, even putting direct internet links into the book. Isn't that exciting? Which I suppose being an ebook is a little easier to do because it's hard to do on
it's like Standing for Truth. If you're going to write a paper, then you need to provide sources. And providing the sources that you do would be looked at as, oh, gee, fraudulent because you're only citing the sources that agree with you.
Creation Myths is in the live chat. Speed of Sound and Gravity. Hi, Mike. We got a few more people floating around in there.
Do we have any young Earth creationists in the side chat?
Yeah, I haven't seen quite a few on there popping up, but by all means. At any rate, back to the main topic of the thing, which is Nathaniel Jensen. This chapter 3 of
come in if he wants.
Yeah. Nathaniel Jensen has been basically laying out the superstructure of things. And the one that he's on at the moment has to do with how much of the genetic code is functional and in what way. So, yeah. So he cited, fortunately, he was able to cite some stuff that is available open access, so I could put the links up to it directly. He's got a paper from 2005 on our little nematodes, and where they basically inhibited most of their genes to find out what did what and find out what dropped off. And then there's another 2012 paper by Ramani on the nematodes. And it's interesting how Jensen phrases the way the text is. He phrased its import as the majority of experimentally inhibited roundworm genes resulted in non-lethal defects, highlighting that little word. Yeah. While the paper had focused on how all this related to animals are made up of multiple cell types, which changed the dynamic of what useful meant in a way different from the way bacteria would. So you now have a different threshold of stuff. And it turns out that there's a lot of chart material. Let me see if I can get that Ramani paper up in here. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
In the meantime, I'll distract everyone with my juggling skills.
Yes. There's a very useful little chart in there in that Ramani paper that you can download, freebie, which goes.
Of course, my big question is he using this whole? Oh, they have defects in order to say therefore evolution is fake.
Yeah. Well, apparently defects can't arise in a design system. Let's talk about the 737 jet, the Hindenburg, the Titanic, you know, just an example, or sickle cell anemia. And
or the Minecraft creeper.
Yeah.
The Minecraft creeper was actually a mistake. It was a defected pig thing. The Minecraft creeper was originally supposed to be a pig, and instead it got its X and Y axes flipped around, and I think it was Notch who created the creeper. Notch liked the creeper, the bug, so much that he turned it into an official mob in Minecraft.
Oh, that would be called a spandrel in an evolutionary context. Stephen Jay Gould would talk about something that was an inadvertent thing that then takes on a life of its own and maybe even a functionality. So although it is a design system because we're talking about a game, nonetheless, it has analogs in that context. Now, another paper that came up after that Jensen cited, a 2008 paper on yeast. Likewise, he's spinning it as, quote, nearly every gene knockout resulted in defects under at least one condition.
Drink.
Which was not quite how it was presented in the paper. The actual paper said, we found that 97% of gene deletions exhibited a measurable growth phenotype, suggesting that nearly all genes are essential for optimal growth in at least one condition. So he replaces defects for optimal growth, and that's not quite.
So he's straw manning.
Kinda, sorta, yeah. And again, the Hillenmeyer paper, I put the full link up to that, and there's also an extremely useful chart in there, which goes into the breakdown of stuff that 63% of the things have a growth defect in this study, in some context or other. And so that's a fair use of that word, but it's not a big problem. And that's the whole idea about what is that there was only 19% that were absolutely lethal. Then there was a particular rich medium mode. There was another 15% there. There was so you get a picture of organisms that have a range of adaptability to them depending upon their environment. And surprise, surprise, organisms will tend to thrive in areas where the overall package doesn't work too much to their disadvantage, and they have a leg up or a pseudopod up or a tentacle up or an eyeball up or whatever they happen to have up on. And this has neither here nor there for creation versus design, because that depends on what mutations you get and what are the context of them and how do they interconnect at varying levels. We're going to find out in the course of looking through Jensen's book whether he ever actually gets to that stage. Is somebody scraping something on the microphone?
Oh, no, that's me. That's my game.
Okay. Stop scraping on the microphone there,
I'm not
or mute
scraping
yourself.
on the microphone. I'm playing the
just
game.
proceed to mute.
Sorry.
And there we go. Our good old little fellow there. Anyway, the issue has to do with what are big things happening and how much does that depend upon little things piling up in new and dynamic ways. And virtually everything, and Jackson, you can jump in if this is something that you would disagree with or not. For me, looking at my favorite go-to example, the reptile-mammal transition, you've got already existing organisms that already are sexually reproducing. They already have DNA systems. They already have epigenetic markers. They already have parasites. They already have a load of neutral mutations and potentially deleterious ones and potentially beneficial ones in a massive network of regulatory systems and homeobox genes and all of that. And now we can start looking at what each individual organism and lineage is doing. And it looks like you have like a bone that's in one position and it can get a little longer and it has muscles attached to it. and those can get a little shift, and this bone can shift over to here, and this one can go there, and then in the embryology, a second a muscle connection can occur because a single gene flips in, and you have now a double jaw arrangement. And then over time, as it moves into an adult, you have double jawed modes, and they still have all the same paraphernalia everywhere else. And then you have a thing where that double jaw, the new jaw mode, is taking over more than the previous one. So the other one becomes less and less important, to the point where it can disconnect its muscle without having a big problem at all, at which point it's just sitting there for millions of years, doing nothing, no harm, no foul, until it starts getting pulled up into the ear structure. And we eventually end up using it as a hearing mode, which happens in various times, in various ways, amongst vertebrates, all of which is a process that involves like 100 million years. It's grindingly slow. It's all involving little teeny this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that. How is that being precluded by the kinds of stuff that Jensen is trying to do for his line in the sand? Well, from what I've glanced through Jensen so far, we're not going to get that argument in Jensen's book. We're going to get instead a magic trick where he is going to try to...
sum it up in a few words. I don't like it, therefore it's false.
Well, it would be nice if he even went that far. But the vast amount of data that interests me looking at the reptile-mammal transition, which is flat out macroevolution, we're not getting from Jensen. I don't think Jensen has ever peeped a burp about the reptile-mammal transition at any point, any time in any of his apologetics. Instead, he's going to try to pull off a trick, which he does with a bunch of charts down the end. And I know Dan Stern Cardinale has looked at these things too, where he's going to argue, aha, genetic entropy has kicked in for organisms, and there has been rapid speciation since the flood in a whole slew of organisms. And based on what? That's going to be the bridge that he needs to build in his arguments about the capacity to do hyper speciation in the period after 4,500 years ago. And I don't think he's ever going to build that bridge. I think it's going to be a skyhook to get him across to there. So that's going to be the little question mark that we're going to keep an eye on in the stuff to come on that.
Again,
so,
I don't like it, therefore it's fake.
Yeah, there's an honesty to that part, but the problem is that by ignoring subjects, you just push them off of the frame. And so you get an argument. I was just watching a Dapper Dino video yesterday that he had just done with Erica, where they were looking at, it was a debate that didn't happen. She was going to moderate the debate with Mr. Batman, I think. And Mr. Batman never showed. He just started to do...
Mr. Batman, are you talking about the nature hacker?
Could be. Anyway, he's a kind of an older gentleman. He's probably about my age. And apparently he forgot that he had a debate planned.
Bullshit.
And instead started doing his own live stream at the same time that he was supposed to be having the debate with Dapper Dino. So they filled in the show. Tomorrow. Yeah. So they filled in the show discussing some old creation videos, one of which was involving David Menton. And you would love this, Jackson, because David Menton, they were going on about...
Oh, would I?
Well, like in a perverse, terrible way, about bird evolution. And Menton was repeating his arguments that the bird's bones are different to where their knee is inside of the body. And...
No, it's not.
It's funny because, like, 2008 David Menton and 2020 David Menton need to get together and, like, discuss what their arguments are.
Yeah.
Because we have in print the chapter, and it's also still on the AIG website, the chapter he wrote for AIG Book 1, What Really Happened to... No, not What Really Happened to Dinosaurs. Did Dinosaurs Turn into Birds? And we have that one. You can read it, in which he says there are two theropods, which he doesn't think they're theropods, with feathers, Sinosauropteryx and Protarchaeopteryx, both of which he says are birds. And now we're at the point where he's saying which they're both, I think they're both dromaeosaurs, aren't they?
Yeah, which he insists that dinosaurs are not birds because they don't have their knees inside their bodies the way that the birds do.
Yeah,
but birds don't even have that.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know what...
As Dapper Dino put a picture of a featherless bird up, a featherless chicken, a mutant chicken, and you could see the little things, all of that all together. It was an ugly thing.
Well,
but
Minton now claims that in the video he made earlier this year that Zen Wanlong, which is a dromaeosaur, is identical to Archaeopteryx. So Archaeopteryx is apparently identical to relatives of Velociraptor because, I mean, it is.
Am I getting the impression there's a certain lack of consistency on the part of the creationists here?
Oh,
that would be correct, yes.
And despite this, do other AIG members still think Archaeopteryx is fake?
Oh, actually, very few do. Really, Kent Hovind is about the only one that still trots out, and the ones in his orbit will still trot out the idea that Archaeopteryx is an actual hoax. You don't find that. I haven't seen that for years at Answers in Genesis. There may be somebody lurking around in the sidebars on it, but no, and CMI, the fissioned group of AIG, they put a specific posting up saying, no, it's that hoax thing is fake. That's not real.
Yeah,
we should not use that. Don't use
a
that.
hoax of colossal proportions. It's because what we have for Archaeopteryx is very different from what we have, for Piltdown Man, Nebraska Man.
We got a dozen specimens.
We have the 13th specimen was discovered last year, I think. So that didn't happen for Archaeoraptor or Piltdown Man.
We would have to imagine that the 1868 hoaxer has been sitting around carving very carefully new examples that they brilliantly embed in the mountain to put them into place. Well, that is one diligent hoaxer.
He's been doing it for over a century.
Little old man out there slipping in the night with his little teeny slippers on, and he gets a little thing out and slices a paper thin fake in there in such a way that nobody can know. He's using the same method the ancient aliens did to build the pyramids without any seams to the rocks. It's the same kind of a thing.
Yeah, it is absolutely magical, but it's also really funny because they don't say that for any of the other early birds. Nothing. Is Rheanavis a hoax? Is Aurornis a hoax? Is Anchiornis a hoax?
It's like they only want it to be a hoax when it disagrees with their worldview.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be they're just that ignorant about paleontology. They're not even aware the other ones even exist. So
the point people on that Archaeopteryx hoax thing was Lee Spentner and Fred Hoyle and a bunch around. And then there were these, I think they were brothers, maybe. I've forgotten the name, where they were like Walker or Roberts, something like that. And for a flurry of times, this small cadre would continue to publish in photography journals, not in technical journals,
because that's where it goes.
And it finally kind of disappeared on there.
Is in photography journals.
Let me thank my patrons here, since we're about at half of an hour in here. I get jibber jabbering and melting in the heat. And Ian Chen, who is one of the patrons for the show. You are amongst our laudable group here who have stuck it out for thick and thin. Our colleagues Hendril and Eric and Benjamin, Speed of Sound, Cyrus Zeshi, our researchers Travis Adams, Ian Chen, Convert Me and Eat Meal, and James Fitzwater, History Minor, Ralph McFadden, and Apologia, assistant researchers Doranco and Todas Real, and our friends Daniel and Steve Bauman, Marigale Beddoes, Insects Are Cool, Devin Reeves, Morton Nielsen, Paul the Skeptic, Puffalopagus, Bo Rasmussen, Alex Stone, and Paul Williams. And I shall continue to thank the legacy patrons, Jen and Jody and Mike and John, Keith, Andrew, Dyer, Yui, Mona, Brad, Daniel, Nyanya, Staggles, Sunsky Stone, Ugly Truman, Trues, Everett, Vincent, and Sue of Weisblum, who have helped at one point or another. It's all mucho appreciated to be able to do simultaneously ink, paper, and food and bills along with all the stuff. So it's a big help on that. And I thank you very, very much. And remember too, there's all the still worries that people are going on about COVID. If any of you do have a situation where you got a triage between your life and things that need to be done and the patron thing for RJ, you have to say bye-bye to the RJ because that's a lower priority than the personal things you do. And I know Dapper Dino does exactly the same thing on his Patreons. No, don't remember the priorities on things. Anyway, second half of the show, will come off as something that I alluded to something. Actually, it's going to be in a later episode about when they were trying to hijack some Southern racists for evolutionary theory. That'll be in a future show. But the one for this week, Evolution News and Views put out a claims paper shows that mutational load arguments don't refute ENCODE. Dum bum bum. They're still waving that ENCODE argument. And they link to a
ENCODE argument. I don't think I've heard that one before.
Oh, ENCODE is the system that came up that looked to try to find out how many genes are actually functional, but they were doing it by end run, which was finding out what kind of transcripts there were among RNA. And so if there was transcription and activity of some sort, that was thought to be an indicator of functionality. And needless to say, they got a lot of pushback from the regular genetics community. It's not that the technique that they developed was a bad one, but they overhyped what they were measuring on it. And the intelligent design movement in particular just went ballistic, going, ha ha, most of genes, they aren't junk. After all, this blows to smithereens, the junk, and this is the technique that's been played on there. Well, it ain't quite so simple. And here we get down, because this Galeota Sprung paper is available open access. So I put that up as a link in addition to the Evolution News thing. Their concluding paragraph, Evolution News site clipped off the last sentence. So they said, our conclusion is simply that an argument for mutational load does not appear to be particularly limiting on F. Of course, you have to look up what F refers to, but it becomes a bit clearer when you read what was in the paragraph leading up to that sentence. And I will read that to you, and I put the whole paragraph up in the links. We stress that we, in this work, take no position on the actual proportion of the human genome that is likely to be functional. It may indeed be quite low, as the contemporary evidence from species divergence and intraspecies polymorphism data suggests. Many of the criticisms of the ENCODE claim of 80% functionality, e.g. Doolittle 2013, Graur 2013, strike us as well-founded. Our conclusion is simply that an argument for mutational load does not appear to be particularly limiting on F. So in other words, they were not making the claim that Evolution News wanted them to. They just nicked a sentence that made it sound like they were doing that.
Quote mine.
Oh yeah, and it's fool's gold, because they have gone out of their way to cite a paper that actually undermines their argument. It's all about how you measure functionality and related to what, and what theoretical limits are on there. And it's all perfectly fine, useful material. ENCODE continues to be used by the regular scientific community once a lot of the hype got worn off. But you've always got Evolution News out there to go ballistic, to try to latch everything into there, as though any of that suddenly makes the ALUs in our genome functional. Sorry.
And they always like to use it to discredit evolution, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, everything is discrediting evolution in their argument.
Evolution would discredit evolution.
Yeah, indeed. And you get these hyperbolic titles. They're like clickbait titles. New study blows to smithereens. New study completely refutes. Evolution completely. It's always hype, 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 hype.
Which, it's always, oh, this refutes evolution. Oh, this refutes evolution, when it doesn't really.
And so the main thing is don't take their word for it. This is not something, frankly, that is unique to anti-evolution apologetics. It's notorious that if you see a discussion of a paper that's in one of the kind of generic website things, they'll beef it up. So every new dinosaur that's found overturns this and so. No, it doesn't. But they're trying to get clickbait. They want you to hype it up so that you, in the mass of people moving their mouse around on their screen, that they'll click on this and pay attention to it. And I found that very annoying. I find the same thing going on in the evening news. As an old fart, I can remember when most of the evening news was news. I know this may come as a shock, not vast arrays of commercials, that when you look at how much new commercials there are on, and then there's an awful lot of the functional clickbait in every single one of the news media there, except for PBS, which doesn't have to worry about commercials. But you get the thing where they're going to tell you about the thing they were going to tell you. Important announcement, we're going to say. And then later on in the show, we're going to get to that important announcement. And then finally, at the end of the show, they get to the important announcement and you find out what it is. The old days when I was in journalism class, this may be completely extinct now. If anybody is a journalism major today, let me find out whether or not, do they still do this? But the point behind the journalism, when you wrote an article, we had like a school paper there. It was in junior high school, what they now call middle school. They don't want to call them junior high schools anymore. That would be just such a shame. It's a junior high school. What the hell?
They should call it the time no one wants to remember.
Yes, the land that education forgot.
Hey, I happen to like my middle school class. Thank you very much.
I did too. I had an awful lot of wonderful teachers.
Oh, anyway, I mean, the experience itself was all right. It was, I don't want to remember things about it.
Anyway, in journalism class, we were naturally encouraged to have a headline that succinctly summarized the point of the thing. And then you would read more detail when you read the detail, not the idea of a teaser headline that's decidedly not conveying core information. And I object to that. Same thing for museums. The old style museum would be boring in the way that some people want museums to be, which is they would have lots and lots of exhibits and lots of little teeny cards that explain lots and lots of information. And so you could just geek out. It's just like you're being inundated with hyperlinks if you put it into a modern internet context. Now everything's minimalist. So when the Sioux Tyrannosaur was shown in Spokane, I think it's been 3 or 4 years ago now, a bunch of us went out to see it. And my God, that's a big, holy shit, that's a big Tyrannosaur. Anyway, what you get is...
It's like a 30-foot turkey.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the knees are inside the body. Anyway, you've got the Anyway, you've got these wall of blank, and then you might have a single picture of something, and then you'll have a little itty bitty card that has like about 3 sentences on it. And so everything is minimalized and artsy-ized and compact-ized. And I like the old style geek museum where you were having an inundation. An example of this as well is the Maryhill Museum down on Columbia River. It was built by one of the, Sam Hill, who was the son-in-law of James Hill, who built the Northern Pacific Railroad, the Great Northern Railroad, back in the 19th century. And that was the old robber baron days of transcontinental railroads. Anyway, he had a crush on Queen Marie of Romania. And after she was deposed after World War I, he built a mansion for her in the wilds of the Columbia River Gorge, staring out on bleak, delirious landscape of Dull as a place that she could retire to. And she took one look at it and go, thank you, goodbye. So she never lived there. And it got turned into a museum. There's also, not far from Maryhill, there's a reconstruction of Stonehenge that was done as a war memorial to the Washington State dead from World War I. And it's at almost the right latitude and exactly the same orientation. If it had just been a little bit farther from where it was, it would work exactly like the one in Britain for all of the alignments for the moonrise and stuff. But it's just a little bit off, rats. Anyway, it's all of concrete, and it's the way it would have been as a complete structure. And it's a kind of funky thing to visit. But anyway, Maryhill happens to have one of the world-class chess set collections, not just a nice chess set collection. If you look at the place that has more historic chess sets than anywhere on the planet, it's Maryhill. It's absolutely gobsmacking. And in the old days, there was a hall of chess sets, a corridor that was maybe 60 feet long, where it was wall to wall, floor to ceiling. Every one of those chess sets were out on little shelves, every single piece. And it was just this barrage of stuff. And so I was absolutely flabbergasted by that.
I went to a place called the Tech Museum in San Jose once, and they had this what could best be described as 2 spiky Earths, one with the water being spiky and one with the land being spiky. And I'm not sure why they had that. It was either population or something, but I was able to point out various little bits on the globe, except for a landmark that I hadn't exactly yet found called the Strait of Gibraltar, or something I should say I hadn't exactly heard of at that point, but I knew basically where everything else was.
Mm. Well, there's various ways that you can use visualization for interesting effect. For example, I've seen an image of the Earth where they take all of the oceans and turn them into a little blob, and you discover that all that water out there is like a little blob, a little ball that if you just compressed it all, or it may have been not ocean water, it may have been fresh water. I'd have to take a look at that. Same thing as if you have a chart that shows all the different stellar sizes and planetary sizes to scale. I'm a scale person, so I love to see things like that. Anyway, if you go visit Mary Hill today, it's probably the way the last time I visited it, which has probably been 25 years ago. It's been a long time. But even by then, you would go in a no more hall of chess sets. They might have a pylon with a couple chess pieces on it and a little card that tells you this was from a set from 1785 and so forth and so on. That's all you get. Everything minimalized. By the way, they also have one of the big collection of Rodin artwork, not the creature that flies, Rodin, but the French sculptor Rodin, Auguste Rodin. They have one of the biggest collections
if it's not
of Rodin.
The creature that flies.
Could you imagine
I'd like to see a Rodin museum and the Godzilla.
If like the Rodin painted with like its one little hand.
But anyway, all of these things are an indication of how annoying I am, in that I really prefer information over coddling, trimmed down, tidied up, summarized. And
evolution slam dunk.
anything that tries to
buy the book.
Buy the book. Don't worry there. It's evolution slam dunk. We love the royalties, and also the rocks were there. There will be a volume 2. There will be additional material. We didn't want to make it
broken into 2 volumes.
Too much of an overload, but we wanted to not have a concession to doing trimmed down stuff. There's a bunch of generic books that are out there. There's stuff that is talking about why evolution is true. Jerry Coyne's book, perfectly fine book. But from an information processing point of view, it's fairly light. Like a page on the reptile mammal transition. And the only technical paper in its references is the Hobson article from 1983.
Archie's book is nothing but technical citations.
And that means you can use it as a springboard. The thing that I found with some readers is that it takes getting used to that. Oh my gosh, there's a pair. Oh, jump in, Jackson.
Oh, I had an experience like that this past week. I finished Neil Shubin's new book, Some Assembly Required, and one of the last things he discusses in the section on endogenous retroviruses is a gene involved in memory. It's a retrovirus. It's called ARC/ARG 3.1.
Oh yeah, that paper we were discussing. Yes.
Yeah, and when it's disrupted, mice can't form long-term memories. You can form short-term memories, but not long-term. But I looked up the gene, and I was reading papers on sort of the backstory of how proteins, our brain has to make RNA, which is made into proteins, for long-term memory. You don't have to do that for short-term memory, but your brain does have to make proteins for long-term memory, which I thought was very neat.
Yeah. And also the role the hippocampus plays in this, and the role that dreaming plays. That one of the things that occurs during sleep is it consolidates memory. And that's why as a fiction writer and as an idea person who writes stuff down, I always bear in mind the fact that if you get the clever idea that drops down your brain chute that you wake up in the day with, write it down, because you will forget it because your memory hasn't had a chance to consolidate that. And afterwards you go, oh God, I had a good idea, but I can't remember what it is. Because that's how the brain works, and we've had to compensate around that. But yeah, we should definitely bring that up because we're going to be discussing.
Speaking of dreaming, I want to have a Rudolph dream eventually, where I'm actually able to befriend Rudy. I like the red-nosed reindeer. What can I say? It's Christmas in July, and even though some people might say bah humbug, I say bring on the Christmas spirit. We kind of need it right now.
I don't even like Christmas when it is Christmas. I have to work in a grocery store.
Yeah, the people who work in retail have a different perspective on an awful lot of holidays, and the fact that
it's all fun for the first week.
Although it's looking like there's a sort of bright side to the COVID thing, is that
no Christmas this year. All right.
Well, the big Thanksgiving sales and stuff. Walmart apparently is not going to be open on Thanksgiving this year, and so there's probably a lot of these things that were, oh, come in and mob and buy television sets in vast crowds that will kill you, because no, they can't do that. So this is going to have an effect for the same reason that the lockdowns in some of these places like India, in Delhi, they could see the sky again. There was blue there. Wow, this is what
the
it used to look like.
The same is true of the bakery. Thank you, America. Good night.
And Jackson's next humor show will be on
hat tip.
Yeah. Speed of sound of gravity goes, what? Walmart? Even Walmart has to pay some attention to the external reality part. And in some respects, they're a slight economic lesson here. Walmart had a gigantic success by dealing in volume, where they would buy lots and lots and lots of stuff in huge quantities. So my motto was, you can get anything at Walmart that you can get at Walmart, but you can't necessarily get everything at Walmart. And so there's a lot of products and things that I can't buy at Walmart because they don't carry it. Well, when you're operating on a volume approach, where now you're paying your employees very little and you're making your profits from huge volume of sales, and nobody is coming in to buy from you because they're dropping dead, that changes the dynamic. So your advantage of volume is meaningless. And so you now have nowhere to cut. You don't have any fallback because everything is based on a squeaky, squeaky volume approach to things. That may be an unsuccessful model from now on. There a lot of what goes on is normal business.
Online stores.
Yeah. That process was starting again, but still, there are some things you need to have like physical contact with. Do you really want to buy a set of jammies from purely online without ever being able to physically touch it to find out whether you would want to wear it? And then, you could send it back, presumably, but that's hassle and complexity. So it may produce a different kind of environment on things. If anyone has ever read the old Isaac Asimov Caves of Steel stuff that was partly turned into iRobot, one of the stories that they did that didn't make it into that film version was, I think it was called The Naked Sun. It was about a whole planet or place where everybody lived virtual lives. They were separated. They were germaphobes, and so they would all do things by view screens and things. And there was a kind of sterile environment because there's stuff that you need to do by direct interaction. So we're going into a brave new world, aren't we? And hopefully, come January 20th, we'll have some people who in government who are not effing idiots.
Hopefully, and, RJ.
Yeah. Even a little less. We could get by with a few. Oh, Louis Gohmert, the climate denying nincompoop, apparently has come down with COVID.
I think you underestimate the situation by calling it hopefully. Do you know that Florida's notoriously Republican, right?
Oh, yeah. Although there are Democrats there, but they gerrymander around it.
They're notoriously Republican. Well, looks like the yoke's on Trump down here in Florida. We're talking a 51% to 38% in favor of Biden.
What happened? We listened to Biden speak recently.
They had to cancel the Jacksonville thing, which, by the way, has a higher crime rate per capita than Chicago. We will assume that Jacksonville was not named for Jackson wheat.
Either of them. There's one in North Carolina and one in Florida.
Yeah, Florida.
Probably one in other states too.
I'll do a shameless plug for the Paralogs of Phileas Fogg. There is a wonderful interlude in the Paralogs of Phileas Fogg where they
in
visit
Jacksonville.
Actually outside of Tampa Town, Stones Hill, where Impey Barbicane has built his Columbiad cannon to fire his projectile to the moon. And that was all taking place in Florida. Yes, the thing is made from aluminum, and it's the wonder metal of the future. And so I have a whole segment of where things go on behind the scenes involving Phileas Fogg and Auda and company down there in Florida with Columbiad. That's why I subtitled the book Columbiad, the Gem of the Ocean, which is a curious little pun.
Now, of course, the question is regarding that little moonshot.
Mm-hmm.
Did it stage?
No. It was, and in fact, that was part of the problem. Basically, he was just having a rifle projectile that would have pulverized the crew inside. It was shot with gunpowder. He put it in Florida because it was an American project, and he reasoned correctly that the farther south you are, you get a little extra push from the fact that you're closer to the equator, which is why ideally for rocket launches, you prefer to have them as far south as possible. You find the European Union to this day, I think they're down in Guinea or somewhere is where they have Sierra Leone or somewhere.
French Guiana.
French Guiana, where they have their European Union launching bay. The Russians have theirs in Kazakhstan, which I think was one of the southern areas. Yeah, from southern Russia.
Baikonur Cosmodrome.
Yeah, which is now no longer in the
or
old
Ukraine,
Russian.
Also known as southern Russia.
Yeah, in southern Russia.
Sorry,
yeah.
too soon. Oh.
Yeah. Well, as has been said, that the reason why the Russians want Ukraine so badly is that someone has observed that Russia with Ukraine is an empire. Russia without Ukraine is just nothing. So,
well, because you need access to an annual body of water.
Yeah. Although even some of their, like the shrinking lakes, Lake Baikal and some of the Caspian Sea and all that stuff is just drying up. We live in a troubled world. Oh, and the tundra is on fire. Isn't that wonderful?
First Australia, now the tundra.
100-degree weather in there. There's huge fires going on there. The Russian press, needless to say, is trying to downplay this.
Well, then again, they do have an easy solution. It's called big wind. No,
yeah,
literally.
Well, let's see. Maybe they can they can take the cancer-causing windmills away from the power grid and put them in Russia to blow it all up to the North Pole, where it will be sucked into the transdimensional portal where the space alien spaceships come out of. You think?
No. You don't understand. It's not a cancer-causing windmill that's called big wind. It's literally a tank with 2 MiG engines, with two of the supersonic MiG engines.
Oh, that's cute.
That jump water
that gets
in
swell
at
gas
the
mileage.
speed of fucking sound.
Oh, well, isn't it a wonderful world we live in?
They used it to combat the Kuwaiti oil fires back when Saddam Hussein decided it would be a good idea to burn the oil industry into the ground.
Oh, well, those pesky little Iranians and Iraqis get together in their little tussle. Millions of people died and all that. T.D. Lane brings up Ukraine also is important as a breadbasket for Russia. Yeah, that's also where the artificial famine that Stalin caused back in the 1930s, where they had all of these farms producing grain, and Stalin just exported it and didn't bother to let any of the locals have much. So that was the first artificial famine. That was around 1930, 31, 32, around
what
that
if
early
planting
year.
but communism?
Yes. They, as many people have discovered on Twitter, when they try to peg me, well, he's an evolutionist and a critic of Donald Trump. He must be like some commie who likes Stalin. And they discover, no, I'm afraid I'm not a fan.
Tankies for the win, RJ. Tankies for the win.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, well, there was a series of, we're complete in digression mode in here, but it's 100 degrees, and so who cares? But there's a wonderful a series that pops up partly, I think, on either National Geographic or somewhere, and I think I've seen it shown up on PBS affiliates and that as well. But anyway, they talk about the World War II super weapons, the various stuff the Germans and Japanese and others did, these monstrous bunkers, these giant aircraft carrier that the Germans were thinking of building and never quite got around to. And they're actually fascinating to watch because they showed how much money was wasted by a lot of these regimes in just senselessly complicated projects that involved huge numbers of people, often slave labor, that just leave these monstrous concrete things. Oh, and there's still a tiny segment I think this was on a different show, but the plan was Hitler wanted to build a grand new Berlin after the war, and Albert Speer designed these monstrous pavilions and stuff. It's all dreary, sterile architecture. It looks like your typical 1930s courthouse on steroids. Anyway, the plan was that there was going to be a covered Autobahn highway that led directly into the space where the new German Hall of the People was going to be, so that Hitler could be brought in underground entourage without having to run through the surface. And there's a segment of that tunnel that was built for this grand project that still is in existence in Berlin today.
They converted it into a subway.
Oh, it isn't long enough. It's only a segment. You find a lot of that. There's weird stuff. In writing the Paralogues of Phileas Fogg, I'll end on this complete geek out moment, that there was a hotel, the St. Nicholas Hotel in New York, where Phileas Fogg...
bells all the way.
Literally, it was themed on the Christmas theme. So there was a whole bunch of St. Nicholas themes.
Rudolph. And please tell me there's Rudolph in there.
Not quite. This was way before Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This is back in the 1870s.
Fuck.
Anyway, language, young man, language. Anyway, the St. Nicholas Hotel was a state-of-the-art hotel in like 1850. It was kind of falling out of favor by the 1870s, but Jules Verne had Phileas Fogg stay there, and I figured that in my story. And it turns out that there's a tiny sliver of the St. Nicholas Hotel that still exists in New York City. It was originally like a 6-story building, and then there was a 5-story addition added to it, so that it covered a whole city block. It was a big hotel, and it had its own gas lighting system. It had didn't have elevators. It was a little too new for that, so they didn't have any of those. You had stairs. But anyway, everything is gone except a tiny slice of the add-on section that still exists to this day as a 5-story high, tiny, narrow apartment block, wedged in between buildings that have been since structured. And so I was able to find actual pictures of the damn thing, so I could find out how tall the windows were and all that to get a sense of how big the spacing was in the original hotel. But it's weird that stuff like that can still persist after like 150 years.
Now, of course, I can understand why there was no Rudolph then, because Rudolph came around just
in the 20th century.
Well, 1939, actually.
That is the 20th century, yes. Anyway, Scientist Mel, we're just at 8 o'clock. Vesta says her husband, his family is Ukrainian. One of his uncles was very pro-Ukrainian and anti-Soviet. Until the USSR collapsed, her entire family would not have been allowed to be in the USSR. Yeah, there's a lot of national and regional things going on there that have been laminated over by centuries of Russian imperialism. You're finding the same thing with Chinese imperialism today. The Chinese are buying up swaths of resources in Uganda and various other spots, and they're showing that, oh, don't you think capitalist imperialists can hold a candle to communist Chinese imperialists when it comes to being snotty businessman entrepreneurs buying up people's real estate and their resources? So we have a whole new world where we get to replace the robber baron model with the Chinese Communist Party robber baron model from the current world. So anyway, on that cheery little note, history is fun, and every place has got it, and we have more and more available today than ever before. A pity that more of it can't be shoveled in my science work, but I've got novels to do, so I get to put them in there. So anyway, Scientist Mel, thank you for hosting. You can pull the plug on us, and we will be seeing everybody next week. Everybody stay safe. Everybody. Don't accept any wooden penguins.
Bye, guys.
Or any strange seeds.
Yeah, strange seeds the Chinese are sending out. Weird.
Don't send us your seed.
Don't. Yeah. If they turn into seed pods that turn into replacement human beings, I mean, that's just one more science fiction. We've already got the giant killer wasps.
Wait, really?
Yeah, really. Haven't you seen those goddamn
murder
things
hornets?
That are as big as the hornets? Yes. Oh,
yeah,
they're in Bellingham, Washington, my state. That's over on the coast. Hopefully, we're too cold here, but if I see one in here, yikes.
Funny enough, my wasp evolution video has been getting a lot of extra views lately.
Aha, yeah. They're a very tremendously dynamic and successful group of arthropods. They just scare the shit out of me, and I don't like them.
Hymenoptera for the win. Ants and bees are wasps.
Yeah, there are apparently some solitary wasps and bees. They're very, very well, not so rare as everyone thinks, but there's some where they don't live in colonies. They don't have a dominant female queen structure. That and everyone kind of forgets about that. You know, they forget about the egalitarian syndicalist bees.
Matriarchy for the win.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm gonna initiate the matriarchy and pull the plug.
Yes, and stay careful. Thank you again for hosting. Get back to your real work, the important stuff, educating the future of America.
I'm happy to do it. I'll see you guys later.
Yep. Bye.
Bye, Mel. Thanks, Mel. How does RJ?
Rulon, James Downard.